Well, I'm back inside from the garden and I had a little bit of harvest, so I thought I would show you a neat way to preserve some cucumbers and some jalapenos. You can do this with other vegetables as well, but this is what I have. It is called fermenting. Many of you may be very familiar with it. There are basically two ways to ferment. You can either use a saltwater brine or what is called a whey, W-H-E-Y, a starter. And last year I made my own whey from yogurt, which I'll show you a little clip of that here in a moment after I show you how I'm doing it this time with the brine. Now, the seasonings that you use are totally up to you. I can tell you with the last round of cucumbers I did, those pickles, I put way too much garlic in that pint jar. In fact, after I ate one, Randy came in and we were talking and he calls me Sparky anyway as a nickname, but he was like, oh, whoa, Sparky the Vampire Slayer. I mean, they were way too garlicky. So I cut that back this time. So what I have here, I only harvested 2 cucumbers, but they fit nicely in this little pint jar. And I had maybe, I don't know, 6 or 7 or 8 jalapenos, which they weren't quite, that wasn't quite enough for the pint jar. So I added a couple of these peppers, which are a mild hot pepper. I'll have to look up the name. I think it's Padron or something, but I'll put the name of it down here after I look it up. So for each jar, I started out with garlic. I actually only cut up 1 clove and halved it between these two. I probably could have added more garlic to the jalapenos. Last year in a quart jar, I think I used like 6 cloves cut in small slices, and it was very good. But I decided I'd back off a little bit, not really wanting to be the Vampire Slayer again. After that, for the jalapenos, I added a little bit of pickle crisp, about 1/8 of a teaspoon. Didn't do that last year. They stayed fairly crisp, but I wanted them to have a little bit more crunch, so I added it. In the cucumbers, at the bottom I have the garlic, and then I did 1/8 of a teaspoon of mustard seed, dill seed, caraway seed, and 1/8 of a teaspoon of the pickle crisp. So that's what's in there. Now when you're packing your vegetables in there, you need to make sure that you've got about 1 inch below the rim. And then I'm using my glass weight, kind of push that down, pack it in even more. And here too, this one's a little taller, but it'll be fine. Now, if you don't have glass weights, something else that I have read that you can use are Ziploc bags filled with water. I would think that might be a little bit harder to ensure that the vegetables stay well below the brine. That's the important part. They have to stay completely covered in your brine. If not, they can grow mold and not be any good. Now, if you know anything about fermenting, you know that it is extremely healthy for you because of the probiotics that are created in the process of the ferment. I like them actually better than water bath canning with vinegar. It's a completely different taste to me. And the other nice thing about fermenting is, like pickles for example, or jalapenos, I might not be able to harvest enough to do a big batch of water bath canning. And you know, if you save them too long, they they just get old. I mean, the sooner you do it, the better they're going to taste after you've harvested. So with fermenting, I harvested 2 cucumbers. I can come in here and make a pint jar of pickles. After you have the weight on, as I said, I'm using a salt brine this time. I have 2 cups of filtered water. There's dechlorinated, no chlorine in the water. That's important too. And in the 2 cups of water is 1 tablespoon of kosher salt. Put my glasses on so I can see what I'm doing. And I'm just going to fill up my jar. Until my veggies are completely covered in the brine. By the way, most people should know this, but anytime you're chopping up jalapenos, hot peppers, wear gloves. You'll regret it if you don't. Now at this point, you could just go ahead and use your wide mouth lid with this piece and screw it on. But if you do that, you're going to need to burp it 3 or 4 times a day, because the gases as this ferment builds up, and you could have an explosion in here if you don't vent it and burp it that often. Because of that, and because I'm forgetful, I actually bought airlock lids. So I'll show you those now. This is an airlock lid. I've actually put this one together, so I'll show you one not put together. You have this piece, you have the airlock piece, and it has this little thing that goes over the top, and then this lid has some small little holes in it. So to put it together, you just push it down into the rubber piece until it is there and sealed. You don't have to go real far because this is going to touch the glass weight. I'm missing a rubber seal. Okay, here it is. So now we put the rubber seal on the top. I take this part off of the ring, and you're going to thread this up through there like so. Carefully set it on the top of your lid. Now when I'm screwing these on, I always work backwards first to try to get the threads correct. Sometimes you have a little bit of difficulty, I do anyway, getting it on there straight. Wonderful. Now I need to get rid of this salt water. I just need regular filtered water, and the fill line where it says, does it say full line? Fill line is right here. So I'm going to carefully add filtered water to the fill line. A little hard to see. And put the cap on that has all the little holes. You will not have to worry about refilling this water. I've never had to do that. You set it in room temperature. For the jalapenos, I think I left them fermenting about a week, maybe a little bit longer. The way to tell is just to undo it and taste it. And if you want it stronger, then you can ferment them longer. After they ferment, you take your airlock off and take your glass weight out. Oh my, Cooper. And you put your, whatever this piece is called, back in your ring and store it in the refrigerator. And they will stay for several weeks. Oh goodness, he's wet and nasty. He must have gotten in his pool, although it is raining outside. So let me do this one. So while I'm doing this one, I'll cut in and show you last year when I was doing the jalapenos using the whey starter and exactly how I made that. My very first attempt at fermenting. I had a lot of jalapenos out in the garden, so I decided I would try to ferment them. What I have here is a wide mouth quart jar. I've got 6 cloves of garlic sliced very thinly in the bottom. And then I chopped up all of my jalapenos and stuffed them in there. Now the next step in the recipe says to add 2 teaspoons of salt, sea salt. This is actually a ½ teaspoon measure. So that would be 2 teaspoons. And then it says to add 2 tablespoons of a starter for the fermentation process. There are different kinds of starters that you can buy or make, and I chose to make a whey, W-H-E-Y starter using yogurt. So I got me a big thing of yogurt, and I made sure I bought a brand that had the active bacteria in it. Wrapped it in cheesecloth inside my colander. Did that yesterday. Takes a day or so. And the liquid that is left is the whey. This can be stored in the refrigerator for several weeks, and it can be used for all kinds of fermentations. So it says to use 2 tablespoons of the starter. And then it says to fill the jar with filtered water. I do know that we have to make sure that the vegetables are below the water. Okay, so we put the seal on, and I've got this little airlock inside my cap. Trying to get this threaded correctly is always a bit of a challenge, so I always go backwards first and then forwards. Okay, now it says to add water to this up to the fill line. Put the lid on. So now I won't have to burp it. And I just leave this sitting out. I think it's supposed to take about 3 days, but if you want it stronger, you can leave it fermenting up to 6 months. And another really cool thing, that yogurt that was left over after it drained, it can be used just like cream cheese, and it tastes like cream cheese. So now I've got 2 containers here. So now I've got 32 ounces of cream cheese. That's pretty cool. And I even have it in cream cheese containers that I saved. Ta-da! After a couple of days, you will notice the brine getting cloudy, and that's perfectly normal. Also, I forgot to mention, I added a sliced up jalapeno to the bottom of my pickles for a little zest. I hope you enjoyed this garden update episode. If you'd like to know where I purchased the glass weights and the airlocks, in the description box below my video, there's something called Janet's Kits. If you click on that and go to the kit on food tools or tools for cooking, you'll find them there, the links. Ooh, this nasty wet dog, and I say bye and say, have a good one, have a good one, have a good one. Bye.